Okay, hello and welcome to this webinar, which is how do you know which remedy to make? And it's part of my free webinar series that I'm running to answer common questions that people want to know about herbs and herbal medicine. So I will get started, and people may join as we go along. So I'll just put my slideshow on. Okay, so we should be able to see that. Okay, so just to introduce what I'm going to be talking about, the number of different remedies and recipes that are out there are obviously staggering. There's lots and lots that you could choose. So how do you know which remedy is best to use in each situation? And I'll be answering that question, or trying to answer that question. And that's just a disclaimer, obviously, if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, or taking any medications, to check with the herbalist before taking anything. So who am I? My name is Laura Carpenter, and I'm a herbalist based in the UK. I run workshops and distance learning courses on herbal things, and I live in Somerset, and I have a small practice in Wellington, so that's where I am. So what I'll be covering today is how do you know which remedy to make? The easiest way is often the best, and using what you've learned at home. So I'll be going into how you can use simple things at home in the kitchen. It's not with any fancy ingredients. It's not using any fancy equipment. It's how you can use what you've got at home to be able to make the remedy that you want to make, rather than thinking, oh, I need to make a particular remedy. I need to be buying, particular expensive ingredients, or I need to be buying particular extraction equipment. So, okay. So with thousands of remedies and recipes, how do you know which ones to use? So some of these you might have heard of: capsules, tablets, tinctures, sprays, lozenges, ointments, creams, liniments, hydrosols, vinegars, honeys, teas, and decoctions. Now, those are just a few, and if you do want to have a look at how you make those, I've got YouTube videos on pretty much every single one of those. But that's just to start. There are hundreds more that different sorts of recipes and remedies that you could choose to make. So yeah, so it's a lot. Let me just yeah. So sorry, I should have said that to begin with. This is going to be going on YouTube, so you don't need to make notes. And I mean, you can if you want to, but it will be going onto YouTube. Right. Yeah, so there are lots and lots, really hundreds of actual types of remedies that you can make. So that can seem very daunting, because you're like, oh my goodness, surely I should need to make, a capsule. I need to be able to make a tea. I need to make something of this and something of that. And really what I'm going to show you is it's bringing it back to really simple things. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. Right, let me get that. Okay. So the first thing, and I've said this in lots of my other webinars, is really important to just use what you have, rather than thinking, oh, I need to go out and I need to buy such and such. I mean, you can do that, and if you really don't have anything, then obviously, do look for it in a local shop, or obviously online. So the first place to look is the kitchen cabinets. The tea cabinet, do you have some herbal tea bags that are that are wandering about in the back of the cupboard, because if you've got some chamomile tea bags, you can use that as a base for making you know, not just infusions, but you could use it in cream making, you can use it in, you know, you can use it in lots of different things. So just because it's a herbal tea bag doesn't mean that you can't use it in lots of different ways. Also, the fridge, you know, if you're going to be making something like an onion syrup, you know, it can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be something with really expensive ingredients. That's literally made with a white onion and sugar, and that's it. So you don't have to have anything fancy. If you do have other things, maybe you've got, you know, turmeric, that you have fresh turmeric, and you know, you may have lots of different things in your fridge. But that's just an example that you could just take the barest of ingredients in the fact of a white onion, and you can make a fantastic remedy just with that. You know, obviously ginger and all those types of things that you probably have in there. So look to what you have in your spice rack as well, because obviously you have heard me talk about lots of different things to do with different spices. You know, your cinnamons, your nutmegs, all of those things, anything that's got a really strong smell to it has got medicinal properties. So you can use those. And also, you know, maybe you've got things growing in your garden, maybe you're growing herbs, or maybe you just have some wild areas in your garden that you can forage wild plants in. So that's might be an easy thing. Don't worry if you don't have that. That's just something to consider. Or a member of your family's garden, if you if you want to ask them. Right, okay. So the simplest remedy is often the best, and this is where I would just, when you want to, you think, right, I really want to make something for my cough. Okay, you've got a cough, and you're like, right, what do I have that I can use? And the first thing to do is to just obviously look in the cupboards, look in the kitchen, like we just said. But you're really looking for the simplest remedy. You don't need to have something that's got 10 ingredients in it. The simplest remedy is often the best. So you can just have just one ingredient or two. You know, if you have two, then, you know, great. But don't worry if you don't, you can just use the one. So for example, maybe you've only got cinnamon. Cinnamon is a very warming herb and can be really effective as a cough syrup. So maybe you're thinking, right, I've got cinnamon, you know, maybe I should make it into a syrup. But before we even get to the syrup part, let's just take a step back. You don't even need to go into making a syrup. I mean, if you really want to, then you can, but just go back to it as a tea. So that's, if you like, as the most basic extraction that we can do with herbs is literally pour some hot water over it, and that's it. You don't need to do anything else. There's no fancy equipment needed. You're just pouring the hot water over, and you're going to get an extraction. It's going to be about 10 to 15 minutes, and that is perfectly enough extraction for you to be able to get in a medicinal property. So you can drink that, and therefore that there is a cough remedy in itself. You don't even know to go down the route of it making it into a cough syrup. You can just have it as a tea. So that's a really good place to start off with. If you then decide, okay, I've made the tea, I'd like to, you know, then make it into a syrup or a lozenge or whatever, then you can from there on. But start off with the tea. It is the most basic, but that doesn't mean that it's not effective. It just means it's simple, and it can be just as effective as something that is maybe takes longer to make and has fancier ingredients. So yeah, I would start off with a tea. So the first thing to do is decide, do you have fresh ingredients? Do you have dried ingredients? So maybe you've got some fresh ginger in the fridge and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to make a tea with this fresh ginger. Now, with something that's a plant that's fresh, it's going to have water in it, and you're going to need to use about twice as much as you would dried. So if you were using, like we talked about, the dried cinnamon, you're going to be using half the amount that you would use if you were using, I mean, we don't tend to use fresh cinnamon in that example, but dried ginger and fresh ginger, or you know, dried mint and fresh mint, you need twice as much fresh mint to dried. So just to remember that in your amounts. So you're going to need to double up the amounts in fresh plant material. So also we need to be thinking about what it is that you're extracting, because we do want to get these medicinal properties out. So it's a good thing to really think about, is it a flower that doesn't need very much extraction time at all? You would 10 to 15 minutes would be perfectly acceptable in that. And the same with a leaf, especially if it's a dried leaf that's sort of broken down into pieces. For example, maybe you've got, you know, your chamomile or you know, mint tea in the cupboard, for example, green tea, something like that. It's probably going to be a broken down, basically, leaf, and that's fine. That'll extract without any difficulty. Now, if you're using something like a root, like we talked about with the ginger, that is obviously a lot tougher. It's more fibrous, and that is going to need more to be able to extract it. Now, if you didn't have a pan and you didn't want to boil it, to decoct it, then you could just leave it in the hot water just for longer. In fact, just leave it until it goes cold, and that's absolutely fine for you to then drink it cold. Or if you want to, what you can do is just pop it into a little saucepan with your, you know, put your dried or your fresh root in the water and then just boil it for about 15 minutes. Now, what this is going to do is it applies a lot more heat to it, and it's going to extract those medicinal properties that much more. This is bringing us into a decoction. Still very simple. We've not added any sorts of ingredients, and I would imagine that most people have some sort of saucepan or pan that they could use to be able to do that. And all you need to do is just literally put it through a sieve afterwards. There's no fancy equipment needed. Berries, again, if you're using a fresh berry, for example, maybe you're using a raspberry or a blackberry, a blueberry, you know, all those types of things do have medicinal properties. If you're using those fresh, you're not going to need a lot of hot water to be able to extract it. If it's dried, again, you are going to need to probably apply a bit more heat to it. So I would decoct it. Okay, so it's just being sensible about how you extract it, but it's an easy thing to do. Right, so there are some things that I recommend that you can very easily do at home. So we've talked about the teas and literally a saucepan. So this is very simple. It's not anything fancier than that, but we're still using things in the kitchen, but we're sort of going up to remedies that are a bit more complex. So the next step up then would be maybe if you wanted to make a glycerite. So that's an extraction where you're using vegetable glycerin as the thing that's going to be extracting. Instead of water, where we're in our tea, we're using vegetable glycerin to extract the medicinal properties. Now, if you're going to make one of those, I've got some YouTube videos on those if you want to look at how to do that. And it's really easy that you can put it in the slow cooker. Now, what I do is I do it in a double boiler. So if you have your jar that you're going to be using, just any jam jar, clean jam jar, and pop in your plant material, cover it with your vegetable glycerin, and then just pop that in basically what is going to be warm water in your slow cooker, and then leave that overnight, and it extracts really, really well, really nicely. And you can do that with infused oils as well, in exactly the same way. So you've got your plant material, you've got your jar, and you're just covering it with a vegetable oil, for example, an olive oil, sunflower oil, etc. And again, it extracts in the same way, and it's a very easy, mess-free, leave it overnight kind of extraction, which just makes it and if you don't have a slow cooker, you can just do it in a double boiler. So you can either do it in a sort like a glass heat-proof bowl over a pan of boiling water, and you can put your plant material in there. Or what you can do, and what I have done is because you're using very gentle heat, you can actually put the jam jar into the pan of barely boiling water. You do need to be careful, and you're not going to be doing it for a long period of time, that you don't have any sort of cracking or anything, but you can do it because jam jars do tend to take some heat because, of course, they have been made that way. So yeah, you can do that with double boilers. You can do it with slow cookers. So that's just an easy way to use things in the kitchen. Now, if you're going to be making balms or ointments, really easy. This is one of my favorite ways, and you can do this either in a double boiler, like in the pan of hot water, or you can do it in the microwave. And you literally put your ingredients into, obviously if you're doing it in the microwave, it needs to be in something that's microwave proof, like a glass jar that you're going to make your lip balm or ointment in. You put your ingredients into your little jar that you've just measured, and then you just put it straight in the microwave and do it on 20-second blasts, really. 20 to 30-second blasts, and then it will just melt it. And once you've got to that just gradual melting point, just give it a bit of a stir and then just allow it to set. And the great thing is there's no washing up because you've made it in the jar that you're going to use. So there's no transferring it from one to the other. I love anything where there's no washing up, and you don't have to be scraping ointment off of whisks, which is not my favorite thing. Yeah, so there's really simple way to be able to do it, and you can use any sort of jar that you happen to have. It doesn't have to be a fancy sort of jar. It's really good if you've got those little jam jars that you sort of get in hotels, and those are really good for making lip balms and that kind of thing. It's very easy, not expensive. Okay, so here are just some resources. If you've not already seen it, this is my kitchen pharmacy recipe for herbal tea book. Again, they're both free ebooks that are on my website, and you are welcome to download them. And it just sort of goes into a bit more depth of the things that I've talked about with easy recipes, but simple things that you can make in the kitchen without there being any sort of lots of equipment or anything like that. Right. I think that's the end of that bit. Let me just take it out of there. Right. There we go. So if anybody has any questions, then you're welcome to ask either in the chat, or I can unmute people if they want to. If they want to ask any questions, you're welcome.
Hi, Laura. I wonder if I can just ask a quick question. This is Sylvia here. I have some dried strawberries that I bought from Amazon, a great big can of it. And I thought they would be nice little snacks for my 2-year-old grandson to nibble on, but he doesn't really care for them. So I'm just wondering if I can use those to make some kind of a product. Like use them in making a tea or a concoction or anything.
Yeah. I mean, you could definitely add them to teas. They would it would extract very well, because of course once it just hydrates in the hot water, it will refresh back into so yeah, you can certainly add it to teas and things. It's going to be really full of antioxidants. So if you were going to use it in some sort of remedy, if you wanted to extract it in an oil, you would probably be looking at something maybe like a hand cream or a face cream, something like that, something that needs that high level of antioxidants. But yes, I mean, you could certainly have it as a tea, and I don't think you would even need to decoct it. You could just add it in hot water, and that would be plenty to extract it.
Oh, thank you. I'm new to this whole field, but I'm just so intrigued by it. I'm wanting to learn more. Definitely going to download your books.
Well, good. And let me know if you have any questions. And when you're on the page, I've got some other free ebooks on there as well that you might find helpful. They're all on the same page, so you'll see it.
I just started dipping into herbalism this summer. And I came across a number of different flowers and things that I thought, oh, I'll pick them and then I'll do an infused oil. But that's as far as I got. I picked them. So I have jars of dried linden blossoms and yarrow, and I forgot what the other one is. So my intention is to make an infused oil, but now I'm stuck in terms of, okay, which oil do I choose? Is it too late? I picked them this summer. Is it too late now?
No, not at all. As long as they've dried well and, you know, there's no sign of mold or anything when you dried them, they'll be fine. Really 8 to 12 months dry, you know, that's when it's going to lose its potency after that point. So you're absolutely fine to continue using them and make them into, you know, an infused oil now is fine.
And then, so if I do them as an infused oil, if I can vaguely remember now, so they sit in the oil for 6 to 8 weeks.
Yes, you can certainly do it. I mean, I tend to go from 4 really, because that tends to be what a lot of people do, but certainly you could do it longer. And yeah, if you're using dried plant material, there's no issue with it, you know, it going moldy. It's much less likely to have an issue with mold. So yes, you can do it like that. I mean, if you wanted to do it quicker, you could do it, you know, like I said, in a slow cooker, and then you could do it overnight. But I mean, there's no reason why. I mean, if you suddenly needed to make something tomorrow, you know, you could do it the quicker way. But yeah, you can certainly do it the cold infusion way, where you just pour over the oil and then just leave it for a month to 6 weeks. Yeah, certainly.
Interesting, because I have enough that I could probably do 2 different ones and try one in the slow cooker and one in the, you know, and just to sit on the shelf longer. Yeah, and compare them and see what they're like. Calendula is the other one I have lots of.
Oh yeah, lovely.
And
that extracts lovely. So you know, you've got no issue. It's always a really nice one to make calendula.
And what's your go-to oil to infuse them into?
Well, I do use olive oil for some things, and if I need an ointment that is going to stay on the surface for quite a long time, I do tend to use an olive oil. So if I'm using something, for example, for like an arthritis ointment that I want to stay on the surface of the skin for quite some time and then slowly absorb in, then that would be something that I would use. But for majority of other things, I use sunflower oil, but that's because I'm allergic to nuts, so I don't use nut oils of any kind. So that's what makes it easier for me, is that I tend to stick with sunflower oils, because it's very stable, and so you don't really have any issues with it going moldy or anything happening to it. So I'm a sunflower oil user.
Is there a difference? So I was looking at the grocery store the other day. So there was sunflower oil and there was safflower oil. Are they the same or are they different?
No, they're different. They're different plants. I mean, we don't tend to have safflower here, but yeah, sunflower obviously is the is the one that you might recognize, in that it's the one that gives the sunflower seeds and everything. That's yeah.
Okay. And so is it better then you mentioned the olive oil stays on the skin a lot longer, so the sunflower would be better that way?
Yeah, I mean, the sunflower oil absorbs a lot more easily into the skin. So if I was going to make a hand cream or a face cream or something, then that would be what I would use, because it doesn't stay on the skin as long. It absorbs in much more quickly.
Okay. And then once I've got an infused oil, can I also add like essential oils to that if I wanted some extra boost of some property?
Yes, you certainly can. And yeah, you can either put the essential oils just straight into your infused oil if you're going to use it as like a rub or something. Or if you're thinking you want to make it into a balm or an ointment to use for something like for insect bites or something like that, then yeah, you could add the essential oils into the ointment itself. So you would be basically mixing the infused oil and the essential oil and a wax of some kind, and then it would set.
Okay. Oh, I'm so thankful I've got you all to myself here to ask all these questions. The glycerite. So you mentioned vegetable glycerin. Is that something that's easily available, at a pharmacy or somewhere?
Yes, I mean they tend to have it. To be honest, it's pretty easy to get online, because a lot of people use it in sort of, I think it can be used in sort of lots of natural cosmetic type things, and I think it's used in the food industry as well. So it is around. It's not something that you can't find, but yes, you might get it at a pharmacy. But
Or a
yeah,
health or something like that.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure you will, because it's very popular in the US and Canada because of the cost of alcohol. People don't use tinctures as much, so they extract a lot more in vegetable glycerin. So I imagine it must be reasonably easy to get hold of.
Okay. And I think I've seen glycerin on the shelf at the pharmacy. So is there glycerin and vegetable glycerin? Are they two different types?
Yeah, it might be a slightly different glycerin. So you do need to look at the label and see that it contains vegetable glycerin is the one that you want.
Okay.
So yeah, it might have a slightly different name, just to be really helpful. But no, I mean it should be labeled as vegetable glycerin. But yeah, you might need to ask for it if you.
Okay. Well, I love your keep it simple, just use the stuff in the kitchen approach.
Yeah.
I've watched some other ones and they just seem a little too advanced for me. Just, I just want to start simple and just kind of learn as I go. So I love your approach, and this webinar has been awesome.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Oh, hang on. Somebody's just asking me a question. I'm just reading. Right, this is a really good question. Yeah, so the question is, if you're making tea for one person in a mug or a pot, how much herb is best to use? Can you use too much? So if it's for one person, the general rule and what you'll find in the majority of books is going to be 1 to 3 teaspoons a day is the sort of average amount for most herbs. Now, that's very generalized, and there will obviously be some herbs that you would never use that amount for and some that you would. But for the majority of the things that you're going to have in your kitchen, and as long as you're not trying to have poisonous plants and all that sort of thing, then that's fine to use sort of 1 to 3 teaspoons, which is 5 to 15 grams for people who want it in grams. So yeah, that would be fine. So you would have maybe 1 teaspoon, and then you could have that up to 3 times a day would probably be the sort of maximum amount that you would have, if you for example, like I said about the cinnamon or the ginger or thyme or any of those types of things that maybe you've got. So yeah, that would be the amount. And for the majority of the things that you're going to be having, usually if it's edible, the amount that you would have to have for you to cause yourself any trouble is so huge, it would be impossible for you to actually be able to physically drink it. It would be like a bucket of ginger. You're not going to be, I mean, I don't think you're going to be drinking and I mean like a serious sized bucket would be the amount that it would cause you any sorts of problems. So as long as you're sticking with things that are sort of, you know, in the kitchen, and you know, you're not going into herbs that have interactions with things, then that sort of rule of thumb is fine. Yeah, so for coughs, you've got thyme, you've got cinnamon. Those would be my two main ones within the kitchen realm. And also the white onion syrup, which I talked about. Again, that's a really good for coughs. So yeah, those would be my main ones within that the kitchen, if you like. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Well, in that case, I think I will just end the webinar here. Thank you to everyone for coming, and I will be putting this on YouTube, so it will be there for you to see. Yeah, and obviously just send me any questions if you have any more. Thank you. Right. Bye-bye.